Tonight we talk about Cleopatra's Charm School for Emperors, yes. The ultimate ancient self-improvement course, complete with eyeliner that could start wars and perfume strong enough to change foreign policy. You find yourself stepping into Alexandria's moonlit harbor. Warm sea breeze brushing your face as the lighthouse Pharos itself casts a serene beam. Across the royal district, somewhere behind those gilded doors, Cleopatra waits, ready to teach the world's most powerful men how to listen, speak, and maybe accidentally fall in love with her. You probably won't survive this emotionally, at least so, before you get comfortable. Take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from, and what time is it for you right now? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You glide past velvet curtains dyed royal Tyrian purple, imported at ridiculous prices from Phoenician shores. Cleopatra knows that appearances are weapons. She stands before you, not atop a pedestal, but close enough that you can smell a hint of lotus oil from her hair. Her eyes catch torchlight, rimmed in kohl made with antimony, supposedly both glamorous and mosquito-repellent. Practical beauty, a theme she champions. Historians still argue whether her so-called charm school was ever a formal institution, or more of an ongoing performance. Cleopatra using her palace as the classroom and Rome's most eligible rulers as extracurricular projects. But here, in this version of the past you're drifting through, the school is real, and admission is granted only to those with power dangerous enough to matter. You tread marble floors that feel cooler than expected, polished by 1,000 footsteps including scholars from the great library next door. Cleopatra insisted that charm without brains was just decoration. Julius Caesar learned that firsthand. One moment he's chasing Pompey across the Mediterranean. The next he's wrapped up not just in Cleopatra's bedsheets, but in her tax reforms and irrigation plans. That's the mainstream fact we can all agree on. Cleopatra was astonishingly well-educated, fluent in languages including Egyptian, rare even among her own dynasty. She gestures toward a mural showing Isis, mother goddess of magic and royalty. The queen models herself after Isis in both divinity and brand marketing. If you're going to teach charm, you might as well borrow from a deity with perfect eyeliner. Servants glide by silently, offering honeyed dates and tiny citrus fruits grown in palace orchards. You're tempted, but you also suspect the food might be part of some subtle lesson. Cleopatra teaching restraint, just by letting you see the temptation. She smiles, as if reading your hesitation. She probably is. Her tutors included philosophers who believed human behavior was predictable. When you observed closely enough, a whisper of music floats in, slow flute notes with a touch of drama, like the soundtrack to a reality show where the contestants are also world leaders. You chuckle quietly. Cleopatra notices that too. She appreciates humor after all. Her barge used to approach Caesar and Antony not silently, but in full theatrical flair, scented sails, golden oars, Cupid-costumed attendants. Why simply enter a room when you can conquer it? One scholar once joked that Cleopatra invented the first celebrity masterclass. Another fringe rumor that she trained sacred ibises to help with dramatic entrances. You don't see any birds tonight, but you wouldn't be shocked if one swooped in wearing jewelry. Her voice finally reaches you, low and confident. Charm, she says, is the art of making someone proud to do what you want. She places a papyrus scroll in your hands. Lesson plans, or perhaps a contract you should definitely read before signing. Either way, your education has begun. Cleopatra leads you into a chamber where sunlight filters through alabaster windows, softening everything it touches. Here begins the curriculum of courtly arts, a holistic approach to influence, fine-tuned through centuries of Egyptian ceremony and Ptolemaic drama. You realize that if charm is a weapon, this is the armory. First comes language. Cleopatra herself is said to speak at least 9 languages: Greek, Egyptian, Aramaic, and more, which makes every Roman who stumbles through Greek conjugations look adorably unprepared. You, too, are handed a simple phrase to repeat. I hear you. Basic, sure, but she explains that the greatest communicators often say the least. Historians still argue whether Cleopatra's linguistic skills were exaggerated by later admirers. Yet the consensus is clear. She didn't need interpreters, which gave her immediate power in conversations. Next, posture. Shoulders relaxed, chin slightly lifted, eyes softened, not glaring, not staring but inviting. Cleopatra demonstrates, and suddenly the air feels warmer, the room smaller. You try to imitate her, wobbling like a flamingo in sandals. A servant coughs politely to hide a giggle. Cleopatra's grin tells you humor is allowed here. Confidence isn't the same as stiffness. Music lessons come with a twist. It's not about playing perfectly. It's about knowing when to let silence seduce. She places a small sistrum in your hands, an ancient rattle associated with Hathor, goddess of love and joy. One gentle shake echoes like tiny silver stars falling. Cleopatra explains that a single well-timed note can transform a mood quicker than a 3-hour Senate speech. Cicero, writing practice follows, but instead of copying laws or poetry, you draft compliments. Clever ones. Compliments that show you listened. Flattery is cheap, Cleopatra murmurs. Recognition is priceless. A mainstream historical fact. Royal scribes in Egypt trained in calligraphy from childhood, because beautiful writing signaled education and virtue. In this school, even your handwriting must flirt. Then comes the science of attention. Yes, science. Students learn to observe breathing patterns, micro-expressions, the moment a rival glances toward a rival or toward you. A quirky tidbit. Cleopatra supposedly had a collection of tiny mirrors polished from volcanic glass, used not for vanity, but for practicing facial cues during negotiation role-play. You get one, palm-sized and unsettlingly reflective. It reveals every twitch of uncertainty. You're invited into a short conversational sparring match. A diplomat from Cyprus plays your opponent, and the topic is delightfully random. Which fruit deserves to be king? He chooses figs. You defend grapes. Cleopatra watches, amused. When you slip into a rant about raisins being grape betrayal, she softly interrupts. Charm persuades without pushing. So you sweeten your argument instead. Grapes unite kingdoms through wine. The diplomat nods, charmed. You win. The room claps politely. You consider retiring as champion of Charm School Fruit Court. Not all lessons are subtle. Cleopatra demonstrates the power of gifts, tiny but personal. She recalls how she once presented Caesar with a miniature statue of Alexander the Great, a reminder of shared ambition. Was that historically documented or a palace rumor? Historians disagree, but the move fits her style, symbolism disguised as generosity. The day closes with a sensory exercise, blindfolded, listening to footsteps, gauging who enters by scent: lotus oil, cinnamon, or a hint of dessert wind. It's almost playful, and yet you feel your awareness stretching, sharpening. Cleopatra's final mantra of the day: charm is attention given, not stolen. You leave the chamber taller, calmer, and slightly terrified of raisins. And you realize this curriculum isn't just about becoming like her, it's about discovering influence, already living in you, waiting to be trained. Cleopatra invites you into a long gallery overlooking the Mediterranean. Moonlight strokes the waves, and the night smells faintly of myrrh and salted breeze. Here, she says, seduction becomes statecraft. You brace yourself because somehow you sense the homework just got harder. She glides beside you, reminding you that charm isn't limited to romance. Attraction is broader. People crave to feel chosen, seen, essential. Cleopatra weaponized that craving. The mainstream historical fact that no one can escape. Julius Caesar didn't just support her politically, he installed her securely on the throne of Egypt. Was that love, strategy, or both? Historians still argue whether Cleopatra manipulated Caesar or genuinely admired him. Her school doesn't care which is true, only that both realities can coexist. You walk by frescoes showing scenes from her reign. Cleopatra stepping from a rolled-up carpetoke, technically a linen sack, into Caesar's presence. A stunt so theatrical it could have been directed by a modern marketing team. You imagine the Roman general blinking, utterly unprepared. Seduction by surprise appearance. Lesson 1. Then there's Mark Antony, a man legendary for both courage and very questionable life choices. Cleopatra understood his desire to be a hero. She let him play the role. He became the dashing commander sailing down the Nile with Cleopatra dressed as Isis beside him. Quirky tidbit: Some ancient gossip claims she once staged a fishing contest with Antony, secretly hooking fake giant fish onto his line to inflate his ego. If true, that's seduction through playful flattery and maybe early reality TV. Cleopatra pauses near a window. Men who think they lead, she whispers, dance better when they believe they choose the steps. You file that away as dangerously useful. You're guided into a practice exercise. A minor noble stands before you aloof, dismissive. Your task, transform the dynamic without any physical touch. You start with a compliment thanks to section to training, but Cleopatra shakes her head slightly. Make him curious, she suggests. So you share a surprising truth about yourself, something that invites questions without revealing. Weakness, his eyebrow rises. He leans closer. You feel the shift. Influence achieved. The lesson moves into more delicate territory, vulnerability. Cleopatra insists it isn't a flaw, it's a power move. Reveal just enough fear to make the other person protective, yet confident you trust them. Emperors love to rescue, she notes, even from problems you don't actually have. Of course, seduction has its darker corners. Cleopatra acknowledges the ethical dilemmas. She mentions her intelligence networked the informants who helped tailor her approach to each visitor. Every desire mapped like constellations. Historians debate whether her spycraft was that intricate or exaggerated by Rome to villainize her. But standing here, you believe every rumor. Suddenly, Cleopatra plucks a pomegranate from a silver bowl, seeds glistening like rubies under lamplight. She offers you one and says, seduction is not about wanting. It's about making someone grateful they were wanted. The juice stains your fingertips, sweet and slightly bitter, just like the negotiations who have shaped nations. She warns, use this art wisely. Empires topple when hearts outrun logic. The gallery seems to tremble under the weight of those words, as if history itself nods in agreement. Tonight, you've learned that seduction is diplomacy's velvet glove, gentle in appearance, decisive in outcome. As you step away from the window, the moon follows like a spotlight, and you can't shake the feeling that you've just passed a threshold. One misstep, and the world might follow you. You're escorted into a sunlit courtyard, a space that feels like an outdoor classroom and a gladiator arena for egos at the same time. Today is about training future emperors, or at least men who believe they are destined for greatness. Cleopatra glances around at her assembled students, ambassadors, generals, princes, all trying very hard to stand casually, but accidentally forming a competitive peacock display. You blend in by pretending you didn't spend 10 minutes fixing your toga in the mirror. Cleopatra claps once. The courtyard hushes. Charm without direction, she says, is just noise. And immediately the drills begin. First, mock debates. You're paired with a Roman envoy who looks like he wakes up each morning ready to argue with the sun. The topic, whether Egypt or Rome throws better parties. He goes on about discipline and structure. You counter with fireworks and live leopards. A mainstream historical fact, Cleopatra hosted famously lavish banquets that blended Greek theater, Egyptian ritual, and enough wine to make a senator rethink his alliances. You win the round when you casually mention that Alexandria has more libraries than Rome has sober philosophers. Even Cleopatra smirks at that one. Next, decision-making under pressure. Servants rush in with scrolls, fake crises like the Nile. Floods early, or Rome demands more grain. Your job is to respond quickly, yet gracefully. Cleopatra watches whether you panic or delegate. You choose delegation, appointing the Cypriot diplomat with the nice beard to handle the grain. He beams with purpose. Lesson, give others roles in your success. Then comes body language sparring. Students approach you one by one, each trying to dominate the space with posture alone. One guy leans so close you can smell his anxiety. Cleopatra interrupts. Advising, influence begins with comfort. You adjust your stance balanced. Relax stand, suddenly the challenger steps back first. Victory by vibe. A quirky tidbit. Cleopatra supposedly invented a game using miniature ships in a fountain to teach fleet strategy. And here they are, tiny wooden vessels bobbing along canals carved through the courtyard marble. You're given command of the blue fleet. The noble from earlier captains red. The goal, control the central pool. You try aggression. He blocks. You try trickery, splashes, distractions, and soon blew out maneuvers red. Cleopatra declares, a leader must think both like water and boat. You nod like that makes immediate sense. But the most intense exercise is empathy. Yes, empathy. Cleopatra believes rulers forget the people whose lives they shape. So she has actors portray citizens with grievances, a farmer with poor harvest, a mother begging for medicine, a soldier seeking pay. You must offer solutions without condescension. Historians still argue whether Cleopatra's social reforms were genuine or image management for Rome's scrutiny. But here in her school, she demands sincerity. You surprise yourself by caring, even while sweating under the Alexandrian sun. Finally, there's the nighttime ritual, firelit storytelling. Each student recounts a personal failure. Cleopatra insists vulnerability unites leaders more than victory stories ever could. A Roman prince admits fear of disappointing his ancestors. The Cypriot confesses he once mixed up two kings' names at a banquet. Scandalous. You reveal something private too, and in the warmth of shared embarrassment, you feel lighter. Bonded. Cleopatra ends the session with one more truth. Greatness isn't who bows before you. It's who stands with you willingly. The other. Students look different now, not rivals, but comrades learning the same subtle art of ruling hearts and nations. You leave the courtyard exhausted, inspired, and wondering if you just earned extra credit for humility. You wake to the scent of roses and resin, ushered into a chamber overflowing with fabrics, pigments, and objects that look suspiciously like early versions of what influencers today might call a get ready with me setup. Cleopatra stands center stage, framed by towering mirrors made of polished bronze. Today's topic: theatrical makeovers and beauty as political technology. A servant presents you with a tiny jar green malahite paste. Cleopatra explains. The mainstream historical fact: Egyptians used malahite and coal not merely for aesthetics, but to protect eyes from sun glare and infections. Beauty doubled as health care. Cleopatra adds one more use. It focuses attention right where negotiation happens: the eyes. You apply a little. Instantly, you look like you've been awake since the Ptolemies invented drama. Next, perfume mixing. Cleopatra glides to a table arranged like a perfumer's dream. Myrrh, cinnamon, cardamom, frankincense. Scent, she murmurs, is memory's puppet strings. A quirky tidbit: ancient texts claim she once soaked the sails of her barge with perfume so strong that Rome could smell her before they saw her. Probably exaggerated, probably brilliant. You crush a rose petal between your fingers, and now even your thoughts feel fragrant. Costume lessons begin. Attendants drape you in linen so fine it feels like wearing a summer breeze. Cleopatra demonstrates the subtle language of clothing. Gold signifies divinity, blue hints at fertility, and red says I might negotiate peace or wage war. You'll find out over dinner. Historians still argue whether her iconic pearl earrings were part of a calculated persona or simply luxurious taste. Either way, you catch yourself studying pearls like they're tiny political pamphlets. Then, wigs. Cleopatra shows off a collection: some tight curls, others straight and severe. Each hairstyle sends a message. One crown braids into the shape of a vulture's wings, a symbol of protection over Upper Egypt. You try it on. You feel bold, terrifying, and slightly itchy. Cleopatra watches you in the mirror. Transformation, she says, reminds the world you can change the story at any time. She recounts a scene, hosting a banquet where each hour she shifted outfits to reflect a new goddess. Guests were mesmerized, disoriented, and very obedient afterward. Makeup artistry includes highlighting emotions you want others to perceive. Want to inspire trust, warm tones, desire rebellion, sharper lines. She adjusts your eyeliner just so, and suddenly you look like someone who wins arguments without speaking. You blink, impressed by your own potential villain arc. Accessories follow: rings engraved with sacred beetles, bracelets bearing lunar symbols, a necklace with a tiny hollow compartment perhaps for a love note or a fast-acting antidote. Cleopatra assures you that great rulers never rely on luck when poison exists. She flips a papyrus board labeled "The Three Phases of Visual Persuasion Entrance." Announce presence before your feet arrive. Engagement: keep eyes locked on you longer than comfort allows. Exit: leave a vacuum the room aches to refill. You practice all three. The other students stare, first confused, then intrigued, then low-key jealous. It works. Finally, a moment of introspection. Cleopatra removes all adornment, hair unbound, skin bare. Nothing but her own gravitational confidence. She looks more powerful than ever. Remember, she whispers, the spectacle supports the queen, but the queen must exist without the spectacle. You nod, realizing true charm starts beneath the paint. Still, you're absolutely keeping the pearl earrings. The sun dips low, and you're ushered into the grand dining hall. The hall feels too humble a word. Columns rise like petrified storm waves, and braziers cast dancing gold across the walls. Tonight's lesson focuses on feasts, scripts, and social codes, the choreography of influence at the table. You're seated not randomly, but with precise political geometry. Cleopatra arranges everyone like game pieces, rivals separated by a charming distraction. You allies close enough to whisper secrets behind wine cups. A mainstream historical fact in elite Roman and Egyptian banquets. Seating placement signaled favor, rank, and future influence. One wrong cushion, and someone's career just slipped into the Nile. Food arrives in courses that tell stories. Figs dipped in honey, sweet beginnings. Fresh fish glazed with coriander, resources of the sea. A towering bread pyramid, Egypt's grain wealth laid bare. Cleopatra doesn't just feed guests. She feeds narratives. Conversation scripts begin. Cleopatra touches her bracelet. Your cue. Ask the general about his horse, she whispers, and you casually drop the question. The general brightens. Horses are his comfort topic. Listen, guide others to speak where they shine, and they'll shine that light back on you. Then, the Cypriot diplomat, your old fruit court rival, leans in, trying to dominate the table talk by recounting a naval skirmish. You counter, not by interrupting, but by adding a detail that praises his strategy. He glows. Cleopatra observes approvingly. Everyone likes their story with a side of flattery. Next comes a toast, where Cleopatra raises her cup of pomegranate wine. The room quiets. She speaks with that practiced softness that somehow fills every crevice. May the mind be as open as the heart. A quirky tidbit, some accounts claim she embedded tiny pearls in her drinks, dissolving them in vinegar to show absurd wealth. Tonight's wine is pearl-free. Probably because vinegar sounds weird with pomegranate. Historians still argue whether Cleopatra's banquets served primarily to entertain foreign dignitaries or to gather intelligence. But here, they're clearly doing both. Servants circulate with impeccable timing, overhearing key fragments and storing them like bees collecting nectar, sweet but dangerous. Under the table, politics play footsie. A Roman senator asks your thoughts on trade. You respond with an innocently insightful remark that implies mutual benefit. Egypt's grain, Rome's ships. Cleopatra's eyebrow lifts ever so slightly. You didn't even know that was a test. Entertainment sweeps and dancers with silk scarves that shimmer like moonlight. Musicians playing lutes and drums. But Cleopatra's lessons continue beneath the spectacle. She leans close. Influence hides in the pauses. You notice who watches whom when the dancers twirl. Who laughs too loudly? Who doesn't clap? You're suddenly fluent in the unsaid. A dish of dates stuffed with almonds arrives just as Cleopatra announces a game. Each person must share one personal hope for the coming year. Vulnerability, again. Leaders pretend certainty, but wishing together makes uncertainty communal. The general hopes for a peaceful border. The diplomat dreams of new trade routes. You, still wearing bold eyeliner, say you hope to master the art of being remembered. Cleopatra nods slowly, like she's engraving that somewhere deep. As the feast winds down, Cleopatra performs her final table tactic, the strategic exit. She stands, offers a smile that feels like a secret gift to each guest, and leaves before the energy fades. Everyone watches her go, longing for one more moment. You stay seated among full plates and fuller minds, realizing charm doesn't just rule the night, it scripts tomorrow's headlines. Long after the last cup has been drained and the laughter fades into gentle echoes, Cleopatra escorts you into a quieter wing of the palace. The torches burn lower here, their flames whispering instead of roaring. Tonight's lesson is one students rarely speak of aloud: spycraft and psychological games. Information, Cleopatra says, is a lover that never lies unless you ask it the wrong question. You follow her through a corridor lined with papyrus scrolls and discreet doorways. A mainstream historical fact, Cleopatra maintained a highly organized intelligence network that stretched across the Mediterranean. Egypt's merchants, diplomats, and even entertainers doubled as informants, collecting whispers and transmitting them back to Alexandria's heart. But charm school takes espionage to the personal level. Cleopatra believes that a ruler's greatest advantage isn't knowing secrets. It's making others excited to share them. She demonstrates first with something simple. A servant approaches with a sealed message. Cleopatra pretends not to care. Naturally, everyone suddenly cares a lot. The servant lingers, torn between duty and curiosity. Cleopatra calls this baiting the silence. You mentally file it next to use grapes to win arguments. Next comes the practice of planted confidences. Cleopatra speaks softly to a visiting noble. Just a single sentence, you can't fully hear. Minutes later, that noble repeats her words slightly distorted to another guest. Within half an hour, the entire cohort buzzes over a rumor Cleopatra invented. She watches it spread like lotus perfume on a warm breeze. When people believe they discovered a secret themselves, she says, they will defend it as truth. Historians still argue whether Cleopatra's reputation for manipulation was carefully earned, or Roman propaganda designed to vilify her. But when she smiles with that knowing glint, you suspect she would take credit for either option. A quirky tidbit, some ancient commentators swore. Cleopatra trained certain palace cats to follow guests and scratch at doors. When they overheard key words, primitive surveillance with claws. You haven't seen any spy cats yet, but you swear something sleek just darted behind a column. Now, it's your turn to test the psychological waters. Cleopatra places you in a lounge where students chat over diluted wine. One boastful prince complains loudly about taxes. You respond by casually mentioning a fictional new tariff rumor just to see what happens. Within minutes, 3 people are debating its impact, and the senator sitting beside you furrows his brow like he's already drafting legislation. You feel a wicked thrill. Cleopatra, watching from the shadows, nods, lesson learned. She teaches emotional anchoring to attach a positive feeling to your presence, or a negative one to your rivals. You notice she laughs warmly every time the Cypriot diplomat speaks, but gives the Roman senator only poised, careful half smiles. You ask why. She replies, he fears being unimportant. A smile too soon would cure him of that. One more exercise, interrogation by kindness. You compliment a general's armor until he's eager to impress you with stories. He reveals troop placements without realizing he's doing it. Harmless in this controlled setting. Catastrophic in the real world. The night deepens. But Cleopatra has saved the hardest lesson for last. Secrecy must be reciprocal. She shares a quiet glimpse of uncertainty, how heavy a throne becomes. When every ally is also a potential betrayer, you don't know if the vulnerability is real or a test. Maybe both. Charm, she whispers, opens doors. Intelligence tells you which ones to keep closed. You leave the chamber with your head spinning, aware that the palace walls have ears and now. So do you? You lie awake beside Messalina, though you pretend to sleep. Your breath slow and steady in the low lantern light. But she knows you too well, and she leans in close. Her whisper a silk thread snaking into your ear. There is no such thing as rest. When power is at stake, she has spent days plotting, nights calculating, and she refuses to surrender to dreams, while Rome itself is still awake enough to betray her. She slips from the bed with the stealth of a cat, bare footsteps silent against the polished floor. You rise a moment too late. She catches you watching, and there is no disguise left between you. Come, she murmurs. If I must stay alert, so must you. Together, you drift through the palace's hidden corridors, where candles burn low and only the custodians of secrets dare to linger. You think of the stories whispered in dining rooms and barber shops scattered through the city, that Messalina keeps the entire bureaucracy of Rome half alive at night, that she fuels conspiracies like a baker tends fires, feeding them just enough oxygen to keep the dough rising. You have seen it yourself. She is sleepless ambition wrapped in velvet and pearls. Tonight, she carries a scroll sealed in deep purple wax. The city shouts when it should whisper, she says, and too many ears strain to listen. You don't yet know the contents, but you can feel their weight in the set of her shoulders. It is a decree, though not one signed by Claudius. Her husband sleeps unaware, tucked away in his own chambers like a harmless old senator. But Rome does not obey the emperor alone, not when Messalina commands the Praetorian Guard. With a glance, not when her spies trade more information than merchants do grain. She leads you into a chamber beneath the palace, a place lit by torches whose smoke stains the ceiling. A semicircle of advisors waits there, some loyal, some terrified, some both. They all nod when she enters. The scroll unfurls. She speaks names, accusation after accusation. Senators whose loyalties lean toward Britannicus, or worse, toward Agrippina, that serpent of a woman sharpening her fangs from the shadows. Each name is a move in a game too complex for ordinary Romans to comprehend, a shifting web of debt, betrayal, and desire. You are expected to remember them all. One advisor trembles. Your Majesty, he dares, if Claudius learns we have... Claudius, Messalina interrupts, likes his wine and his peace. Her smile is the cut of a knife. He will not learn. You think of the emperor's tired eyes, his trust so thoroughly offered to the woman who stands now in judgment over half the Senate. The meeting disperses. Messalina lingers. You follow as she climbs a narrow stair to a balcony that overlooks the sleeping city. Look, she says, pointing to the flicker of distant torches on Rome's walls. Every light is a life that could burn me. You have known her long enough to understand. Beneath her audacity beats a frantic heart convinced that enemies lurk in every shadow. She tightens her robe around herself. Though the night is warm, you think I crave luxury. She whispers, more to herself than to you. But I crave safety, and the only safety in Rome is to strike first. You want to tell her she is safe, that her influence is unshakable, but before you speak, she turns to you, eyes glinting. Promise me, she says. Promise you will stand with me when the tide turns. Even against the emperor, the city holds its breath. So do you. You nod, and with that single movement, no words, no contract, you become more than her confidant. You become a participant in treason, tethered to an empress who mistakes survival for conquest, who believes love is merely loyalty sharpened by fear. Messalina places her palm against your cheek, a soft contrast to the hard truths she lives by. Good, she breathes. Because the tide is already rising, she returns inside, leaving you alone with the stars and an unspoken question. How long before the sea finally swallows Rome's most tireless empress? By dawn, Messalina has already orchestrated half a dozen schemes, each one spinning outward like threads from a spider's abdomen. You barely sleep an hour before she summons you again, not with words, but through the simple act of throwing open the curtains, letting Rome's golden morning flood the chamber like a herald of unfinished business. She stands dressed in shimmering silk, a statue of authority that refuses to chip or crack. Today, she announces, we feast. You wonder who has earned her generosity or whom she plans to intimidate with it. Messalina's banquets are never just celebrations. They are declarations of dominion. Each goblet of wine is a reminder of her power. Each course a subtle threat. She commands the palace stewards to prepare an evening spectacle worthy of divine appetite. Singer-slaves from the Aegean islands, dancers stitched into transparent linens, perfumed fountains spraying honey water into the air. As servants scramble, she glides through the palace halls, issuing orders with the precision of a general. You follow, still blinking sleep from your eyes, clutching your own nervousness like a cloak. Rumor travels fast in Rome, faster than chariots on a race day, and already you hear whispers trailing in her wake. She plots against Agrippina. She grows too bold. She forgets her place. But Messalina has never believed she has a place. She believes Rome is hers to define. By late afternoon, senators, poets, generals, and their jeweled wives stream into the palace. Gold and silk flash like sunlit waves as they bow and flatter, each one terrified of making the wrong joke, the wrong toast, the wrong compliment. Messalina welcomes them with honeyed warmth, but you see the ice beneath her smile. Every guest is a potential traitor. Every laugh is a mask. She collects their gestures, storing meaning like a squirrel hoards acorns for winter. When the feast begins, the tables overflow with excess, oysters from Baiae, mountain board dripping with pomegranate glaze, figs stuffed with imported cheese and drizzled in rare pepper oil. Flutists play hunted melodies while dancers twist around marble columns like vines come alive. You sit at her side, a place that draws more than a few curious glances. Claudius, oblivious, chats amicably 3 seats down, thrilled by a platter of lamprey prepared exactly to his liking. He adores simplicity so long as his wife is near. He assumes all is well. You envy his ignorance, even as you dread the moment he learns what hides behind the curtains of his own empire. Messalina leans close, her voice soft but her intent razor-sharp. Watch their eyes, she tells you. Mouths lie, eyes confess, and so you do. You see nervous glances shared between senators who owe too many favors to the wrong people. You catch a widow's gaze linger too long on a Praetorian officer, rumored to be friendly with Agrippina. Suspicion blooms everywhere, watered by Messalina's paranoia, perhaps, but still undeniably rooted in soil that has always been fertile for betrayal. Then, as dessert is served grapes soaked in spiced wine, Messalina rises. She raises a cup and silence crashes over the room like a sudden wave. To Rome, she says. To stability and to loyalty. The crowd echoes the toast, the word loyalty trembling like a nervous bird trapped in a cage. She scans the assembly, searching faces for weakness. Claudius beams proudly at her eloquence. A senator stumbles on his words, perhaps to drunk or to guilty. Messalina notices. You see her mark him with her gaze, a mental dagger already pressed to his throat. Tonight's festivities are only the beginning. Tomorrow will bring interrogations, accusations, arrests presented to the emperor as necessary precautions. She does not feast to fill her stomach. She feasts to test the pulse of fear. The orchestra swells once more. Laughter returns, forced, brittle. Messalina settles back onto her cushioned seat, her hand brushing yours beneath the table. Her fingers are cold, you see. She whispers. Even joy can be a weapon. In that moment, you understand the truth she has been sculpting from night after night of tension. Messalina isn't fighting for dominance anymore. She is fighting to survive a war that has already begun. And tonight's banquet, it is the opening battle. If you'd like, I'll continue directly to section 10. The next and final chapter of the story. The feast's embers still glow in your mind when night wraps the palace again thick, watchful, humming with the secrets left unspoken. You think Rome might finally sleep, but Messalina never does. She has summoned you to her private chambers, where the silk curtains shiver like restless ghosts, and a single oil lamp flickers on a table scattered with scrolls and sealed tablets. She stands before a polished bronze mirror, stripping herself of jewels, symbols of a trust that is wearing thin. Her hands tremble, just once, barely noticeable. But you notice. For all her bravado, she knows the empire's knives are sharpening. Agrippina hovers like a storm cloud ready to strike lightning straight into Claudius' heart, and by extension, Messalina's throat. You saw them, she murmurs. The ones who dared not look at me. They already serve her. Her reflection meets yours. In that liquid metal image, she looks less like a predator and more like a woman fighting to keep her head above water. Historians still argue whether Messalina's downfall was inevitable, driven by ambition, or by enemies too thirsty for change. But here, in this flickering chamber, inevitability feels like a closing fist. She orders a messenger to summon Silius, the handsome senator rumored to be warming her bed and conspiring to replace Claudius entirely. You've seen the two of them together. The air between them could ignite torches. A quirky tidbit the palace servants whisper. He once wrote a love poem comparing her to a Venus statue that could make marble blush. Messalina found it adorable. Claudius would find it treason. The door opens. Silius enters with the strut of a man who thinks passion can overpower politics. Messalina presses a signet ring into his palm. Tomorrow, she says, we secure our future. You swallow. Our, did she include you in that? Or did she just mean herself and the man who isn't her emperor? She steps closer to you, lowering her voice into a velvet hush. Remember what I taught you. Power belongs to the one who acts first. There it is. Cleopatra's lessons. Passed through generations of dangerously enchanting women, power is seduction sharpened into strategy. But Cleopatra had ships, armies, and Julius Caesar. Messalina has gossip and borrowed loyalty. A sudden crash echoes from the outer hall. A guard bursts in, pale as bone. Claudius has been informed. His advisors, especially the stern Narcissus, have moved swiftly. They suggest the emperor leave Rome immediately, afraid of an assassination plot. They paint Messalina as the spider and Silius as her venom. The guard's voice cracks. He orders your arrest. Messalina's composure fractures. For the first time, you see raw terror. Her grip on the table leaves nail marks. No, she breathes. Claudius won't believe them. I will speak to him, but the guard shakes his head. Claudius is already gone, taken to the Praetorian camp, where fear rules more than love. Messalina rushes into the courtyard, barefoot on cold marble. You chase after her as she calls for her children, for her carriage, for anyone who still remembers her as empress rather than enemy. The moonlight washes her in silver, making her look almost divine, almost untouchable. You know history rarely shows mercy to almost. Soldiers surround the garden, those same soldiers who once bowed to her. Now they wait for the order that will end everything. Messalina tries one final gambit. She sends word begging Claudius for a private audience, tears streaking her cheeks like fragile battle lines. But Claudius does not come. Instead, a messenger returns. The sword is metaphorical in his hand, but the verdict is not. Messalina collapses beside a cypress tree, a place once used for lovers' trysts and whispered promises. You kneel with her, feeling the ground pull at your knees as though Rome itself demands submission. Her voice is small. Tell him, I only wanted us safe. There is no reply, only the hiss of a drawn blade. You turn away, not out of cowardice, but because once again, you probably won't survive the memories otherwise. When dawn breaks, the empire quietly erases her name, as though she were just another rumor. Yet you know the truth. Messalina did not lose because she played the game wrong. She lost because she played it too well. The palace finally settles into silence, one so soft it feels like fresh snow falling inside your chest. The torches burn lower, their glow turning amber, then honey, then a sleepy caramel that barely clings to the walls. The marble beneath your feet warms again, and every tight breath begins to loosen, just a little. The night that once brimmed with schemes and sharp decisions now smooths itself into a calm horizon. Those racing thoughts, political betrayals, whispered alliances gently drift away like petals on a slow-moving river. You've walked alongside a woman who tried, desperately, to hold the world in her hands. And now you get to set that world down. Let the palace fade. Let the garden's shadows soften into harmless shapes. Let the echo of danger dull to nothing at all. You are safe here. You are distant from history's storms. You are drifting. With every exhale, the drama shrinks into tiny pinpoints of starlight far away. Untouchable. Your heartbeat slows to match the quiet hum around you. The air grows warmer, cozier, as though soft blankets have wrapped themselves over the empire, tucking every worry to sleep. And maybe, just maybe, you carry a small comfort from Messalina's story, that even in a world built on power plays and hidden blades, there are moments of tenderness, of laughter, of sudden joy, moments that prove we are more than our fears. So rest now. Close your eyes. Let history stand guard while you dream, because tonight, Rome can wait.